Welcome to the AtlanticCentre podcast, where we explore pressing issues at the intersection of security, cooperation, and resilience in the Atlantic space. In today's episode, we focus on a critical and increasingly urgent topic: the growing impacts of climate change on maritime security and how military and multinational actors are preparing to respond. We're honored to be joined by Eléonore Duffau from the Institute des Relations Internationales et Stratégiques and Jennifer from NATO's Climate Change and Security Center of Excellence. Both were featured speakers at the recent Maritime Security course on climate change, organized by the Atlantic Center. In the panel focused on crisis response operations in changing strategic and environmental context. So before we dive into details of your panel, could you each briefly introduce your role, how it connects to this topic, basically what is your function? Namely, I'll start with you, Jennifer, at NATO. NATO
Yes.
CCA, so.
Yes, so the CASCO, short for the NATO Climate Change and Security Center of Excellence. So I'm part of the outreach and engagement branch at CASCO, which is one of the 4 branches. And I'm the External Relations and Partnerships Officer. That means that I support the organization in finding partners that can be part of government, think tanks, NGOs, private sector, academia, to collaborate with CASCO in achieving our mission and our vision.
Thank you, Jennifer. And Eléonore?
Yes, I'm a research fellow at IRIS, at the Climate, Environment and Security Program specifically. And in this sense, I work specifically at the Climate and Defense Observatory, which is financed by the French Ministry of Armed Forces. And in that context, we look at the consequences of climate change for the Army.
Okay, so thank you very much for being here with me today. Eléonore, I will start with you. So this will just be a conversation between the 3 of us, stating what you know and what you think the reality of climate change and produces in the landscape of security and in the landscape of geostrategy in the Atlantic. So, Eléonore, I know that you are an expert on HADR operations. Could you please explain us a little bit more what that actually is? And please tell me about the case study of the French Navy.
Okay, so HADR operations are short for humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operations, and they're made by armies, not specifically the French one, when there is a crisis and that the civil security forces are not able to respond for many reasons, or they are not sufficiently able to tackle all the challenges linked to the crisis. And so with the climate change, we notice an increase in climate weather hazards and with climate disasters. So this increase in frequency and in number of climate disasters lead to an increase of the solicitation of armies to conduct these operations. And for the case of France specifically, we witnessed a sharp augmentation, around more than 200% of operations were conducted between 2007 and 2023. And so there is a huge increase of these operations, which leads to a lot of new challenges, operational challenges notably. And for example, an operation that was really hard to conduct was the Irma operation in 2017 in the Caribbean islands. The French Navy intervened after Hurricane Irma on Saint-Martin and Saint-Barthélemy.
So the outermost regions of France.
Yeah, exactly, the Caribbean regions. of France, which are overseas territories, and the Navy intervened with an emergency answer with several ships that were located at the time on the islands, next to the islands, with several frigates that were sent. A hard work of operational assessment of the damages to then conduct an inter-army operation of assistance.
Okay, well, that's really complex, but I need to delve a bit deeper on that. And I have to ask, in terms of the operational theater that the French Navy in this case faced, what were the biggest, according to your expertise and according to your studies, the biggest complexities that the French Navy faced?
On this particular event, there were several challenges. So first, they prepositioned, before the hurricane Irma happened, some personnel and some military equipment on the islands to respond quickly to the hurricane. But the hurricane was so violent that the communication with the team on the ground were cut. So they had to make sure that the team was safe to then launch the operation. However, they faced challenges on the ground because the dock were filled with boats. There were some concern about the safety of the dock for the ships, for the military ships to land, to dock. And so they had to send divers to make sure that the place was safe. And then at some point, they realized that the forces that are located in the Caribbean were not sufficiently equipped to answer all the challenges because there were more hurricanes to come, Hurricane José and Maria, who arrived a few days later.
Looks like a couple, but it's a very violent couple, right?
Yeah. And they were looting on the ground. People were scared. They are almost 90% of the building on Saint-Martin that were destroyed or damaged. There were 10,000 people that were homeless. So the army is able to respond at some point and at some extent. And so they had to call for reinforcement from the metropolitan France. And so an amphibious helicopter carrier left metropolitan France with 500 military personnel and a few hundred vehicles to replace all the vehicles of the administration that were destroyed on Saint-Martin.
So basically, what you just described in a very extensive way, it's what I would define in a simple sentence as a logistic nightmare.
Yeah, it was.
Well, thank you, Eléonore. Jennifer, I would like our audience and the people that will be hearing this podcast to learn a little bit more about NATO Casco.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I think I pronounced it wrongly in the beginning, so I'll just say what you advised me to say, NATO Casco. Please, Jennifer, if you could tell us and explain us what is NATO Casco, when was it founded, and why is it relevant nowadays?
Yes, so Casco is a relatively recent organization. It was founded in October 2023, and so it's an independent military organization that is one of the 30 NATO centers of excellence around the world. It's the first one in Canada, the second one in North America, with one already being in the US.
It's the first one about climate change.
And it's the first one about climate change. So all the centers of excellence have very specific topics that they work on. For example, mountain warfare, cold weather operations, strategic communications. So this one was created on climate change, and NATO had been looking or discussing on some degrees about climate change for a few years, but it's really recently in 2021 that it started mentioning climate change as a defining challenge of our time and a challenge for the Alliance more specifically. So in 2021, at the NATO summit in Brussels, NATO adopted the Climate Change and Security Action Plan. And in 2022, NATO published its strategic concept, which is a concept that guides the alliance for the decades to come. And it indicated that it wanted to be a leading organization in understanding climate change and the impacts on security. And the CASCO was created as part of a recommendation of NATO experts to look into climate change and how it affects security.
Thank you so much. And considering the geopolitical landscape of the Atlantic, let's focus just on the Atlantic theater. That's the heart of NATO operations. That's why it's Transatlantic Alliance. Where do you see the biggest challenges, and considering those challenges, especially related to climate change, how do you think NATO CASCO can be an improvement? Let's put it like that.
A big challenge for the CASCO compared to other centers of excellence, I think, is that climate change is a topic that is often politicized. So we're seeing that among allies at the moment, changes in government imply changes in how allies want to be involved in climate change. The advantage of CASCO is the fact that it is independent. So that means it's more flexible and autonomous. And the program of work of the CASCO is decided by the sponsoring nations that decide to invest in it. So that means at the moment there are 12 of the 32 NATO allies that are sponsoring nations of the center. They provide budget, they provide personnel, and they each have a representative on a steering committee that decide the program of work. So that means that even though there can be ups and downs in politics and geopolitics about the stance on climate change, we are able to continue working on the issue and advancing the program of work.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe our time is up. So to conclude, I would just like to ask to Eléonore and to you, Jennifer, what is one key message you would leave to policymakers, security professionals, or academic researchers about how we must adapt to crisis response strategy in the light, obviously, the main topic of the 5th Maritime Security course, climate change? I'll start with you, Jennifer.
My message would be more for military practitioners specifically, in understanding that addressing and adapting to climate change is not a trade-off with operational effectiveness. You absolutely need to adapt to climate change to remain operationally effective and to keep your advantage against potential adversaries.
And Eléonore?
I completely agree with Jennifer. I think it's going to be a matter of efficiency and of capability for the Army to be able to anticipate the issues linked to climate change. And I think that one element is cooperation for the Army, specifically on HADR operations. What we've seen with Operation Irma is that cooperation between Caribbean countries and armies on this particular event was extremely important, and a very good lesson learned was then to create exercises between partners of the Caribbean linked to interoperability between the armies to answer very much efficiently and quickly to these challenges.
Well, thank you so much for your thoughts, for your lessons. I leave this room a more knowledgeable person, And thank you so much for your presence at the Maritime Security course of the Atlantic Center.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Francisco.